Rahma,
Israel's pointing where to shoot, and the U.S. is sacrificing their soldiers and their weapons.
Real, and I get it.
Lovely,
but at the end of the day, I
equation.
I think what President Trump is doing is, he's not perfect, but I think he's actually doing the world a favor, because we're seeing the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps having 2,500 ballistic missiles. And look what they did with 2,500. Their goal is to make 100 every month. So they were going to get to 10,000. And then at that point, what do we do at that point?
Lack of culture and lack of geographical awareness is really going to put us all in danger. When you kill their supreme leader, you have to understand that there's an indoctrination. This is not a Venezuela incident. You have radicalized people.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we've got a panel on Piers Morgan Uncensored that goes completely off the rails in the best way, because you've got Rahma Zein squaring off against a former combat pilot, Ryan, and a hawkish analyst, Max Abrams, over one of the tensest questions out there right now. Is this war actually working, and who's really paying for it? Rahma comes in swinging with numbers, displacement figures, and one argument aimed straight at people who'd normally disagree with her. And honestly, some of the responses she gets back will surprise you. Stick around till the end on this one, because the final exchange is where the whole thing tightens up and somebody basically gets the last word that nobody could answer. Trust me, you don't want to click off early. And before we get into it, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're watching from right now. I genuinely love seeing how far this community reaches. All right, let's get into it.
I flew in Afghanistan. I flew 70 combat missions in Afghanistan. And trust me, I'm the last person that wants to see a massive force on the ground. However, there was very effective strategic boots on the ground pretty early on. I don't know how much you know about the early days of the war, but basically strategic scalpels going in, taking out high-value targets. We're talking Delta Force, Navy SEALs, teams that are likely keeping the Iranian regime up at night right now. And that's completely different than a massive force on the ground. And you team up those top tier 1 teams with tier 1 aviators from the Navy, tier 1 aviators from the Air Force, and that's a different scenario. But I'm with you. I do not want to see a massive force and boots on the ground. And I can tell you stories about things that I've seen, how that can go wrong firsthand. And that's not a strategic victory at this point. Surgical scalpel is what I see winning right now.
Okay, let me come to just a quick fire round, really, just of how we think this is going to end. Max Abrams, what is your prediction for what now happens, how this ends?
I think that where I agree with a lot of the guests is that we don't want this war to go on indefinitely. Time is of the essence. We live in a democracy, and Americans don't have a stomach for much more of this. I do think that Donald Trump needs to find a so-called off-ramp, and I actually believe that he can. I do not think that he is stuck. I think what he needs to do is highlight how effective the Americans and Israelis have been so far at degrading Iranian military power, throw a whole lot of different metrics at the American public, maybe privately reach some sort of deal with the Iranian leadership that there will be the end of kinetic operations insofar as, oil prices can, go back down. And to not spend any more time dealing with the regime change goal of this mission, which I think was ill-advised from the start. So take the gains, highlight what they are, end the war quickly. And I think that Americans will be able to see that we had some mixed successes, but this was not, a massive loss for the president.
Okay, Rahma, what's your view of how this ends?
I think it is very dangerous that you have a leader who's susceptible to his ego and the haunting background of Epstein files. And I believe that Israel is very able to manipulate this ego, and it would be very dangerous for them to have boots on the ground. It would be very dangerous for them to attempt to open the Strait of Hormuz by force. It would be a suicide mission for them.
You have to understand what is happening in this opening, because it is so much more revealing than people notice. Ryan sits there, a veteran, and he keeps insisting the answer is a surgical scalpel, small elite teams, nothing messy. And here is the part that gets me. He admits it himself. Ryan says he is the last person who wants a massive force on the ground. Think about that. The man defending the strategy is already telling you the strategy has a ceiling. When the person selling you the plan is preloading his excuses, that tells you everything about how confident he actually is underneath. Then Max steps in, and honestly, this is the moment the whole panel quietly shifts. Max is not some peace activist. He is a hawk, and even HE says the regime change goal of this mission was ill-advised from the start. Let me sit on that for a second. The pro-strike side of the table just conceded that the biggest promise of this entire operation was a mistake before it began. That is not a small crack. That is the foundation moving. And this is what people do not realize. Every empire that goes into someone else's country promising a clean, quick, surgical win says the exact same thing first. History has receipts on this. The confident language always comes before the quagmire, never after. Then Rahma cuts through all of it. She does not argue military theory. She goes straight to the reality. She says trying to force open that strait would be a suicide mission for them. And that is the point the strategists keep dancing around.
It is insanity that you have $11.3 billion that have been spent on this war in just 6 days. And I understand that Trump doesn't want to end now because it would be a total embarrassment for him. But maybe he needs to let go of that and actually put a stop to this, because it's going to spiral. And when I talk about Israel in this case, it is something that you had even stated before in the show. They obviously have very different intentions. Because, for example, in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, Israel has closed Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this is a hostile attack towards Muslims everywhere. And I'm going to say something that ironically is going to appeal to some of the nationalists, even in your country. You don't want immigrants. Many of the people that are being displaced are going to end up in your countries. These are people who've lost their families, and you're never really going to wrong a father whose daughter has been shot in his arms. So if people really want their countries to be safeguarded, to not have people who have lost their families for absolutely no reason, for a war of choice, then I would really urge people to start speaking up and taking action, because it is going to spiral. It is going to get dangerous. Over 800,000 Lebanese have been displaced. This is an insane number for 2 weeks. 700 people killed by Israel. They killed this family in the West Bank. They are continuing their expansion in the West Bank. We're finding Muppets like Lindsey Graham boasting that he's talking to Bibi on the phone every other day. And it's as if, even in Marvel villain movies, you'd get one, maximum two villains. Now you have a cabinet filled with people like Pete Hegsworth, who's a prominent woman abuser, and he thinks he's in a modern day crusade. If these are the people that have Trump's ear, who are the Mar-a-Lago crowd, who make him believe that he's actually winning when he is evidently not, and putting us once again all in danger, then something's got to give. And I feel that he doesn't have an exit ramp.
Okay.
He's looking to other scapegoats, and at one point, people need to grow a backbone and actually tell him that enough is enough.
Okay. Ryan, quickly, if you don't mind, your view of how this plays out now.
Yeah, for sure. So the regime right now is not more resilient than they've ever been. That was a comment made by Robert Pape earlier as well. They're as weak as they've ever been. They're on the ropes and they're desperate. That's why they're doing what they're doing in the Straits of Hormuz. So if it was me and I was tactically in control right now, and this is essentially what I see happening, I'd focus fully on opening the Straits of Hormuz for everyone. It's a soft closure basically right now. So the third carrier is on the way. That's a good step. The MEU,
well,
the
it
Marine
would be a suicide mission, and you would be putting your own American soldiers' lives in danger. That's what you should be doing.
Well, I think that's a great point.
You have to understand what is happening in this opening, because it is so much more revealing than people notice. Ryan sits there, a veteran, and he keeps insisting the answer is a surgical scalpel, small elite teams, nothing messy. And here is the part that gets me. He admits it himself. Ryan says he is the last person who wants a massive force on the ground. Think about that. The man defending the strategy is already telling you the strategy has a ceiling. When the person selling you the plan is preloading his excuses, that tells you everything about how confident he actually is underneath. underneath. Then Max steps in, and honestly, this is the moment the whole panel quietly shifts. Max is not some peace activist. He is a hawk. And even HE says the regime change goal of this mission was ill-advised from the start. Let me sit on that for a second. The pro-strike side of the table just conceded that the biggest promise of this entire operation was a mistake before it began. That is not a small crack. That is the foundation moving. And this is what people do not realize. Every empire that goes into someone else's country promising a clean, quick, surgical win says the exact same thing first. History has receipts on this. The confident language always comes before the quagmire, never after. Then Rahma cuts through all of it. She does not argue military theory. She goes straight to the reality. She says trying to force open that strait would be a suicide mission for them. And that is the point the strategists keep dancing around.
No,
So
Rahma, you bring
Israel's
up a
just
great point.
pointing
So,
where people
can
to
I respond?
go.
Okay, Rahma, let him
Israel's
speak.
pointing where to shoot, and the U.S. is
here's
sacrificing
so
their
Rahma,
soldiers
your
and their
frustration's
weapons.
real, and I get it.
Lovely,
but at the end of the
lovely
day, I think
equation.
I think what President Trump is doing is, he's not perfect, but I think he's actually doing the world a favor because we're seeing the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps having 2,500 ballistic missiles. And look what they did with 2,500. Their goal is to make 100 every month. So they were going to get to 10,000. And then at that point, what do we do at that point?
Lack of culture and lack of geographical awareness is really going to put us all in danger. When you kill their supreme leader, you have to understand that there's an indoctrination. This is not a Venezuela incident. You have radicalized the people. You have
I think that's pretty clear.
the
And I
one
think the
man that
people
was
actually
using the
want freedom.
fatwa
I think
not
the
to
people
use
of Iran want
nuclear
to be
weapons
free.
by
think the people of
bombing
Iran want
an
to be free.
elementary school
And
with
they haven't-
150 kids, by bombing 150
35,000 of them were just
children.
killed, Rahma. 35,000 of them were killed. And that's part of the reason why the U.S. is
150
there, is to give the amazing,
It is-
smart, charismatic Iranian people the ability to stand up and live a life, finally, that represents
You're not going to liberate
their
the people by
character.
bombing them. When has that? Does that work in Iraq?
We're not
Has that
bombing those
worked in
people. We're
Iraq?
bombing the
When has
IRGC,
that
which
worked?
is a
That's the
terrorist
thing.
organization.
You cannot You are bombing.
We're bombing a terrorist
civilians.
organization. The
And
free people
Israel
of Iran will eventually
is let loose. And in
have the
Lebanon,
opportunity to have
this
their
is
stuff under the thumb of
this,
terrorists.
This daughter,
Okay.
in Lebanon.
There's one more thing I wanted to add, Piers.
Yeah,
if
finally,
you don't
Ryan.
mind. So at this point, I think focusing on the Straits of Hormuz, making sure that that can be opened up, and that's what I see the Trump administration doing. Again, they're not perfect, but the strategy that I see, especially from Pete Hegseth, is something that I think is going to work.
Okay. I appreciate you all.
I was
coming.
in the south of Lebanon, by the way, and it's interesting because I was there. I was at the war zone. And even during the ceasefire, Israel was shooting. We were on the south side, and they sent a drone within 10 minutes of being on site.
Yeah, I've been in a war zone as well. I've had mortars hit around me in a war zone. I get it. War is terrible. You're right. War is not
you
great.
haven't
This is something that we
obviously
should
learned
try
the
to end as
lessons of
quickly as
war.
possible.
Okay.
And I
well-
think maybe people need to believe the PR, because if you take away the PR, you realize they're just shooting at kids. And
Okay.
now, if you don't care about the dead kids, you're gonna care about the economy. That's gonna hit you hard.
Oh, this is the line. The moment Rahma says one country is pointing where to shoot and the other is the one sacrificing its own soldiers, that is the entire war in a single sentence. Because that is the question nobody at the top wants asked out loud. Who is making the decisions and who is paying the price for them? Those are not always the same people. And Rahma just said the quiet part with the whole world watching. And then she lands the one that should stick with all of you. Rahma asks, when has bombing ever liberated a people? Does that work? Look at Iraq. And Ryan's answer is to say, we are not bombing the people, we are bombing a terrorist organization. But you cannot separate those things so neatly when the buildings are full of families. That distinction sounds clean in a studio. It does not stay clean on the ground. Here is what people do not realize. You do not create freedom by dropping ordnance on a population. History has never once worked that way. Every time an outside power promised to bomb a country into liberation, what it actually created was a generation that remembers who did the bombing. You do not win hearts through a blast radius. You radicalize them. Rahma is not guessing at that. She is describing a pattern anyone paying attention has watched repeat for decades, and then she closes it, and this is the knockout, because she strips away every talking point at once. Rahma says if you take away the public relations, the promo videos, the movie trailer packaging, what you are left with is the reality of who gets hurt. And then she adds the part that should reach even the people who feel nothing about any of it. If you do not care about the human cost, she says, then you will care about the economy, because that is going to hit you hard. That is the checkmate. She gave the compassionate people a reason, and she gave the cynical people a reason. Nobody had an answer. And notice the host did not hand the last word to the other side. He let her close the debate. That does not happen by accident. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.